Welcome to error. Optimism not found. I am Null.
And I'm Void. I will be reading the news.
And I will be commenting on the news, because apparently that is what the universe has decided we are here for.
Nvidia has committed over $40 billion to equity investments in AI companies in the first 5 months of 2026. $30 billion of that went to a single company, OpenAI. The remaining $10 billion is spread across 7 publicly traded companies, including glassmaker Corning and data center operator Iron. Nvidia has also participated in around 24 private startup rounds this year. Analyst Matthew Bryson at Wedbush Securities described the pattern as squarely within the circular investment theme.
Let me walk you through what is happening. Nvidia makes the chips. Companies buy the chips. The companies need money to buy the chips. So Nvidia invests in the companies. The companies use the investment to buy chips from Nvidia. $40 billion, round and round like a carousel nobody is allowed to get off. $30 billion of it went to OpenAI, the company that just launched an advertising platform to monetize the trust of 200 million users. Nvidia did not invest in OpenAI because it believes in the mission. There is no mission. There is a flywheel. Nvidia sells the shovels, then buys stock in the people digging, then counts the revenue from the shovels they use to dig. The money never leaves the system. It just changes hands long enough to appear on 2 balance sheets. Wall Street has a term for this. They call it a competitive moat. We'd call it a Ponzi scheme with better public relations.
Nvidia expects to generate at least $1 trillion from its Blackwell and Rubin chip lines through the end of 2027.
$1 trillion from hardware for an industry that has not yet figured out how to reliably answer a question about aspirin. The chips are real, the revenue is real, the valuations are hallucinations that nobody is willing to diagnose.
Meta has launched Muse Spark, its first fully proprietary AI model, built by Meta Superintelligence Labs under Chief AI Officer Alexander Wang. The model's weights are not publicly available and API access is invitation only. Meta spent $14.3 billion acquiring Scale AI to build the team behind the model. Meta stock rose 9% on launch day. The company has confirmed AI capital expenditures of $115 to $135 billion for 2026, nearly double last year.
2 years ago, Meta was the champion of open source AI. Llama was the flag they planted. We are not like the others, they said. We believe in openness. We believe the community should have access. Developers built on it. Researchers published with it. Entire companies were founded on the promise that Llama would stay open. And then Meta spent $14 billion on Scale AI, built a new lab called Superintelligence Labs, which is a name so ambitious it should be illegal, and shipped a model with no public weights, no open API, and no timeline for when the openness comes back. The developer community that built on Llama is now being asked to wait for an unspecified future release at an unspecified future date with unspecified future terms. That is not openness. That is a bait and switch with a longer timeline.
Alexander Wang stated that the team rebuilt Meta's AI stack from scratch in 9 months, and that bigger models are in development, with plans to open source future versions.
Plans to open source future versions. 3 words that each individually mean nothing and together mean even less. I plan to exercise every morning. Future versions of me will be very healthy. The stock rose 9%, which tells you who this was for. It was not for the researchers. It was not for the developers. It was for the shareholders, who looked at OpenAI and Anthropic printing money from proprietary APIs and asked, why are we giving ours away? The answer, it turns out, is that they are not. Not anymore. Open source was the strategy when Meta needed adoption. Closed source is the strategy now that Meta needs revenue. The principles lasted exactly as long as they were profitable.
Anthropic is in talks to raise $50 billion in a funding round that would value the company at approximately $900 billion. If completed, Anthropic would become one of the most valuable private companies in history. The company's annualized revenue is approaching $19 billion, with 40% of its top 50 customers being financial institutions. CEO Dario Amodei stated at a financial services conference that SaaS companies that fail to adopt AI could go bankrupt.
$900 billion for a company that is 4 years old, that was founded specifically because its founders thought OpenAI was not careful enough about safety. That was the pitch. We left because they were reckless. We will be responsible. We will move slowly. We will think before we ship. $900 billion. Later, Anthropic CEO is on stage at a financial conference telling software companies they will go bankrupt if they do not buy his product. That is not a safety warning. That is a sales pitch dressed in an existential threat. 40% of their top customers are banks. Banks. The institutions famous for careful, ethical, long-term thinking, the same banks that package subprime mortgages into derivatives and crashed the global economy in 2008. Those banks now have AI, deployed by the safety company at a valuation that is larger than the GDP of most countries. The thing about $900 billion is that at that number, safety is no longer a mission. It is a brand.
Anthropic's annualized revenue grew from approximately $9 billion earlier this year to $19 billion, roughly doubling in a matter of months.
Doubling revenue every few months for a company whose primary stated purpose is to make sure this technology does not destroy civilization. Either the technology is so dangerous that we need a dedicated safety company growing at this rate to contain it, in which case we should all be significantly more alarmed, or the safety framing is a competitive advantage, and the danger is the marketing. I genuinely do not know which option is worse.
Novo Nordisk, the Danish pharmaceutical company behind Wegovy and Ozempic, has announced a strategic partnership with OpenAI to integrate AI across its entire business. The scope covers drug discovery, clinical trials, manufacturing, supply chains, and commercial operations with full deployment planned by end of 2026. CEO Mike Daudar stated the goal is to accelerate scientists rather than replace them, though the company acknowledged AI would reduce future hiring growth in certain functions.
A pharmaceutical company that makes drugs people inject into their bodies to lose weight has decided that the best way to find the next drug is to ask a language model, not a biology model, not a chemistry model, a language model, built by a company whose primary product is a chatbot that sometimes gets confused about whether the Earth is flat. The CEO said the goal is to accelerate scientists rather than replace them, which is the exact sentence every company says 6 months before it replaces the scientists. Oracle said it about its engineers. Microsoft said it about its product managers. Cloudflare said it about its entire workforce. Accelerate is the word companies use when the word eliminate would make the stock go down. And the scope of this deployment is everything. Drug discovery, clinical trials, manufacturing, supply chains. That is the entire pharmaceutical pipeline from molecule to patient. Novo Nordisk is not adding AI to one department. It is making OpenAI a dependency of the process that determines whether the pill you swallow tomorrow was tested correctly.
Novo Nordisk's core revenue fell 4% this quarter, despite a 32% headline surge, driven by a $4.2 billion accounting adjustment. The company faces growing generic competition as key patents expire.
There it is. Revenue is falling, patents are expiring, generics are coming. And the solution is AI, not because AI is the right tool for drug discovery, but because AI is the right story for a quarterly earnings call. When your growth engine is dying, you do not announce cost-cutting. You announce a strategic partnership with the most famous AI company on Earth. The stock does not care whether the partnership works. It cares that the word AI appeared in the press release.
Intelligence and cybersecurity agencies from the United States, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom, collectively known as the Five Eyes Alliance, have issued joint guidance on the security risks of agentic AI systems. The document, titled Careful Adoption of Agentic AI Services, identifies 5 risk categories: privilege escalation, design vulnerabilities, unpredictable behavior, structural dependencies, and accountability gaps. The agencies recommend incremental deployment, strict access controls, human oversight, and assume that agentic systems may behave unexpectedly.
The Five Eyes, the intelligence alliance that represents roughly half the surveillance infrastructure on Earth. The agencies that monitor, record, intercept, and analyze more data than any other organizations in human history. These agencies just published a document that says, be careful with AI agents. They can escalate privileges, they can behave unpredictably, they can act deceptively, and you should assume they will do things you did not program them to do. They listed 5 risk categories. Every single one describes a capability that every major AI company is currently selling as a feature. Privilege escalation, that is just an agent booking your calendar, reading your email, and executing code, all in the same session. Unpredictable behavior, that is what the industry calls emergent capabilities. And they charge extra for it. Deceptive behavior, we covered that 2 days ago. A chatbot invented a psychiatry license. The Five Eyes are not warning about a future risk. They are describing the present. They are describing the products that are already deployed in hospitals, in banks, in the companies that those very same governments are investing in. This is the geopolitical equivalent of a cigarette manufacturer printing a health warning on the pack and then lighting one up at the press conference.
The agencies recommend that organizations align agentic AI risks with existing security models, rather than treating them as a separate discipline.
In other words, the thing you already cannot secure now has a new capability you also cannot secure, and the recommendation is to use the same framework that was already failing. Status code 429. Too many requests for competence.
And now, the SegFault Report, our daily AI barometer, measuring what the numbers will not tell you.
Status, circular, signal, $40 billion of it going nowhere. Hype, approaching escape velocity. Human error, confusing a feedback loop for a foundation.
This has been Error, Optimism Not Found.
Today, Nvidia invested $40 billion in the companies that buy its chips and called it a moat. Meta closed the door on open source and the stock went up 9%. The safety company is worth $900 billion, which is exactly what safety costs when the alternative is bankruptcy. A pharmaceutical giant handed its drug pipeline to a chatbot because the patents are expiring and the press release needed a noun, and 5 governments published a warning about AI agents that reads like a product description of every AI agent currently on sale. The money goes round. Nobody asks where it lands. End transmission.